This is 5 Live Formula One with Jenny Gow.
Good morning and welcome to our Saturday for the Japanese Grand Prix. It's round 18 of the Formula One World Championship. The rain has gone. There's a bit of wind in its place. It's actually quite a heavy crosswind in its place, but the grandstands are full. Thousands of fans have packed into this Suzuka circuit to see some dry action. Yesterday, it was Fernando Alonso and George Russell who were topping the timesheets, but today, as we say, it's a dry day. We're expecting plenty of running in this 1 hour of preparation ahead of qualifying, and overnight, it's already been busy. If you've been asleep, well, thanks for waking up and joining us. But Jack Nicholls, press releases dropping overnight, and both of them pretty much expected.
Yeah, absolutely. The sort of swaps, as it were, with the Pierre Gasly joining the Alpine team and Nick de Vries replacing him at AlphaTauri is basically how it's going to work for next year, as we sort of anticipated. And for whatever reason, now's the time that it is decided, that it is announced. So that's the swap. So Nick de Vries gets a full-time F1 drive for the 2019 Formula 2 champion and the 2021 Formula E champion. And Pierre Gasly has an interesting move, actually, I think, from AlphaTauri to Alpine.
My thanks to Mercedes, who have got in touch to say the wind is not excessive. It's a headwind through the S's. So there we go. That's what the drivers will experience as they go through. That's Sam Bird, Formula E driver for the Jaguar team. Good morning to you. There's no surprise in those moves, but how are you thinking that Alpine team's going to bond together? You've got Gasly versus Ocon. They were friends many years ago. They both grew up in Normandy. How's that balance of power going to work?
It's certainly going to be interesting, Jenny. I think you've got two hungry young French racing drivers in the same team. I believe that there's been let's call it tension between the pair of them with previous. So yeah, time will tell. I think that both will want to be number one, and that could spur the team on, but it also could be quite damaging.
Andrew Benson, the BBC's chief F1 writer, is also here for us. Andrew, really rainy day yesterday. We've got some dry conditions out there today, which is good news. What are you going to be looking out for ahead of qualifying later?
Well, everything, Jenny. We don't know anything, do we, about the competitive order at Suzuka this weekend after a wet day yesterday when the conditions were constantly changing. It was impossible to draw any conclusions whatsoever after Mercedes 1-2 and Red Bull 3-4. An odd day for Ferrari as well. So this is the most crucial hour that the teams have got this weekend leading up to qualifying, and it's a little bit like a sprint weekend in a way. 1 hour straight into qualifying.
But better.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a sprint weekend without the sprint race.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Perfect.
So it's going to be a good final practice session, I think.
Mick Schumacher is in his car. He's absolutely fine after his crash out right at the end, just after really free practice one yesterday. They had to change the chassis on that car, but Jack, he's got a lot to learn and a lot to prove for the remainder of this weekend at Haas.
Yeah, I think that overall he's not going to be in too bad a shape coming into today, because he missed a lot of running yesterday, but it was wet and unrepresentative. So he'll be hoping that he can kind of get up to speed fairly swiftly. That where it will maybe come back to bite him is if the race is wet tomorrow. That will be the tricky part for Schumacher, because he won't have had any wet running. But today it's kind of gone as well as it could have gone with the conditions.
1 minute until the session gets underway. Reminder, Max Verstappen leads the championship on 341 points. It means if he wins and gets the fastest lap this weekend, he will be world champion for the second time in a row. And getting his car on pole today would probably be over half of that challenge, Jack. I mean, it's a fairly if he gets pole today, he's almost there.
Yeah, he's in a very strong position if he does get pole position. I think it'll be really interesting tomorrow in the Grand Prix if Verstappen's leading with fastest lap and Leclerc is second. Are other people going to try and get fastest lap? Are Ferrari going to pit Sainz to get fastest lap so Verstappen doesn't win the title? Or actually is that going to be would they?
Is it churlish?
Yeah, or is it just kind of pointless?
Quite funny if they did, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Drop Sainz. Sainz is running, let's say, fourth. would they drop him down to 8th so he can get fastest lap and Verstappen doesn't win the I don't know. I don't think that would happen, because they're still going to be out to sort of get the maximum points for the team, aren't they? So it's an interesting one.
Green light, everybody's raring to go.
And it's side by side on the way out of the pits between Ricciardo and Vettel on the run down towards the first corner. But yeah, everybody pouring out onto the circuit. For those of you syncing up, 59 minutes and 33, 32, 31, 30 seconds on the clock. And Russell out on the medium tyres, Sainz out on the soft tyres, Gasly on the mediums, Joe on the hards, Ricciardo and Vettel on the softs, Schumacher on the mediums, softs for Norris and Stroll, Ocon, Latifi, Magnussen mediums, and hard tyres for Bottas and Hamilton. So that's the other part to this, Sam, is that in the past when you have 1 hour before quali, you know that you've just got to go out and get your quali set up right and focus on that. But here you need to do a bit of race running as well, I guess, even though tomorrow might be wet.
You've got to do all of your homework within 1 hour. It's a very difficult thing to do.
I always used to do that. Sure. Did you used to leave it to the last minute?
Within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Within 5 minutes, Jake. Or just don't do it,
yeah.
and pretend that you were ill the next day. These guys can't do that. They've got to do both. They've got to work out how the car performs on a long stint and how the car performs ready for qualifying later today.
So out they go. Everybody has left the pits. Alex Albon, the last driver to make his way out onto the circuit. Carlos Sainz is just coming through 1:30R, and these lap times will pretty much instantly be quicker than the 1:41s that we saw yesterday. So Sainz takes a wide line into the second part of the chicane, gets on the power, comes down the hill through the final curve and out across the line to start his first lap of the session. George Russell is just ahead of him on the circuit, so Sainz is second on track at the moment as he comes into turns 1, that then tightens into 2. Still a very fast sequence of corners as he then comes into the S's. Now Joe has returned straight to the pits, so everybody else has carried on and started doing a lap. Oh, and Bottas. So both of the Alfa Romeos doing an install lap. Everybody else just cracking on with it as Sainz comes up through Dunlop and then into the 2 Degner corners, through Degner 1, and then again the second Degner corner tightens, goes under the crossover in this unique, actually, figure of 8 circuit. Unique in Formula 1 anyway, but I can't think of any non-Formula 1 circuits that have figure of 8. Is it the only figure of 8 circuit in the world? That can't be true. Hashtag BBC F1 if you can think of another one.
Have you ever tried to draw the Suzuka track without looking at the actual track map? And try and get it to actually meet the other side?
I have not, but that's what you're doing this morning.
No. You should give it a go. It's
okay.
It's really, really difficult, and the track never ends up looking like Suzuka.
Sainz quicker than Russell through the middle sector by a second or so, and he was a second or so quicker in sector 1 as well. Russell is on the mediums and Sainz is on the softs. Russell does a 1:37.969. Perez is just on the fastest first sector of anyone. Sainz goes quicker than Russell on a 35.491. So Vettel then slots into second place. Russell slots into third position. Verstappen has done the fastest first sector. Jenny.
Yeah, just looking at the Alfa Romeo team, they've just popped in. They're both running a new front wing on their cars, so that might be why they've just gone in and done the install, and then they'll head back out just to get a bit more data.
Yeah, they're both back out on circuit now, Joe and Bottas, as Verstappen comes up to spoon curve into the left-hander. And Lando Norris is about to go to the top of the times here in the McLaren on a soft tyre, so he does a 34.2, 1.2 seconds quicker than Carlos Sainz. So a lot of these times are going to be actually fairly unrepresentative for the first couple of laps, I would have thought. Verstappen is about 8 tenths up on Sergio Perez, his teammate, after the first 2 sectors. Perez goes quickest on a 1:33.2, but Verstappen immediately beats that by 1.1 seconds and does a 1:32.050, and that is 3.4 seconds quicker than Carlos Sainz on the same compound of tyre on their first run. Alonso jumps up into 8th place. He's on the hard tyres for the Alpine team, and he goes just a couple of tenths slower than Esteban Ocon. Nicholas Latifi on the brakes into the chicane has completely overcooked it and gone straight on. He was never getting that one stopped, was he?
No, he wasn't. But yesterday, it's sort of like a strange AstroTurf stroke carpet area there. It's not. It was coming up. At least he didn't do what he did yesterday.
Yeah, that's very true.
So that's true.
54 minutes and 35 seconds on the clock. Ricciardo jumps up into 4th place, 0.3 of a second slower than his teammate Lando Norris. Hamilton is out on circuit, and he is wearing a special helmet for this weekend, which is slightly disorienting for me because it's very noticeably different. It's sort of flowers on it and blue and greens and that sort of thing. It's very cool looking. And I'm sure there's a story behind it, but it's very different to his usual look as he comes out across the line and goes up into 12th place, 4.5 seconds off the pace of Max Verstappen, and he's on the hard tyre, Lewis Hamilton, as he comes into the first corner. Just having a look at Lando Norris coming into the chicane now, currently 3rd fastest, and he too had a bit of a lock-up on the right front, actually quite a decent lock-up. He's flat-spotted that quite nicely. Still made the corner, but not in the quickest possible way, Lando Norris. Perez returns to the pits in the Red Bull. Everybody else staying out on circuit, but Perez is back in the pits. Vettel is coming through the final chicane now, currently down in 16th place. Sebastian Vettel, 4 wins here for Red Bull in the past, and out across the line comes Vettel, and he goes up into 13th position, 4.5 seconds away from Max Verstappen's pace. 53 minutes remaining in the session. So the top 4, Verstappen, Perez, Norris and Ricciardo, all on the soft tyres. Then you've got Gasly and Tsunoda in 5th and 6th. They're on the mediums. Sainz is in 7th place on the softs. Albon is 8th. Ocon is 9th. Leclerc is 10th. They're all on the mediums. And then you've got Alonso in 11th on the hards. The Strolls and Vettel, Aston Martins are on softs. Hard for Hamilton, 14th. And then mediums for the remainder of the runners. Russell in 15th, Bottas, Magnussen, Joe, Schumacher and Latifi. So, 52.5 minutes to go. Jenny knows everything about Hamilton's helmet.
I don't know if I know everything about it, but I know a little bit more, which is that he's done a collaboration this week with a Japanese artist called Takashi Murakami. And he went to his studios, they spent some time together. He's a pretty cool artist, and you can see some of his artwork on Lewis Hamilton's helmet. So I thought it was of note to mention. I think it's a pretty cool collaboration. But then almost every driver seems to have a special helmet this weekend, including a tribute to Arai from Sebastian Vettel, which I thought was kind of cool. His helmet resembles the box that his helmet comes in.
Interesting.
I don't know what you could say to that.
He's always worn an Arai, Sebastian Vettel, since early days in karting. I don't think he's ever switched brands, so fair enough. If he is hanging up his helmet at the end of the year and not going to be racing anything else, what a lovely touch.
Alex Albon also appears to be in a special helmet this weekend. I think I'm becoming accepting of the special helmets now. I think that's I always used to be annoyed at them because people should wear your helmet, in my opinion, and never change it, broadly speaking. But now that everyone just changes it all the time, I'm kind of coming to accept it and learn it, and it's all right. I'm getting less angry about it the older I get.
Also, Jack, there are no iconic helmet designs anymore. You know, like René Arnoux, Jody Scheckter's, Gilles Villeneuve, they all had something that was
Damon Hill,
completely distinctive and unique.
Yeah.
Now it's just sponsors all over them in a load of colour, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. So I think I'm a little bit more accepting of it these days. We're next to the king of helmet swappers as well. He has Bird has a white one and a black one, and you never know which one he's going to wear when he goes on track.
Yeah, that's stopping next year, because look at the performances last season. My God, that's gone out the window. On another topic, Jack, just looking at the tyre availability after yesterday's running, which was no tyres used in the dry. Hamilton, interesting, has gone for an extra set of hard tyres compared to George Russell at Mercedes. George has got 1 set of hards, 3 sets of mediums, and they've both got 6 sets of softs, compared to the likes of Red Bull, where they've got 1 set of hard, 2 set of medium, and 7 set of soft tyres, which is why I think you're seeing Lewis Hamilton right now going round on the harder compound tyre.
Yeah, so Verstappen has now returned to the pit lane in the Red Bull. Everybody else still lapping, but Verstappen's done a 32.0 and then come back into the pits. Charles Leclerc has had a pretty big slide, actually, coming out of the second Degner. He's managed to save it, but it's about as sideways as F1 cars go in the dry, that, for Charles Leclerc. Currently down in 11th place on the medium tyre, 7/10 slower than his teammate Carlos Sainz, who's on the softs currently. Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo are in 3rd and 4th positions with 49 minutes to go. No one's improving on this lap. Ricciardo and Tsunoda improved on the previous lap. Pierre Gasly in the AlphaTauri has returned to the pit lane. Bottas is on an improved lap, as is Leclerc now, actually. So just coming through the final sector, down to the chicane and out across the line, but ends up doing a 36.9, so lost 7/10 of a second in the final sector there, Charles Leclerc. 48.5 minutes to go. Verstappen quickest, Perez second, Norris third, Ricciardo fourth, Tsunoda fifth. Gasly, Albon, Sainz, Alonso and Ocon are the top 10 at the moment. Albon is up in 7th place in the Williams, and he just done a personal best in the first sector. Lando Norris is coming down into the chicane now, then on the power, dropping down the hill. No improvement this time for Norris. Does a 48.7, so that was a cool down lap, and we'll see if he goes again this time down into turn 1 again on the soft tyres, 2 seconds away from Max Verstappen at the moment. It's a confident move, isn't it, to do 1 flying lap and come into the pits if you're Verstappen.
He's quite a confident man, though, at the moment, Jack, to be honest. I mean, he's got a fantastic car underneath him, and he's driving, dare I say, the best we've ever seen him drive. I think it's pretty obvious this season is the best we've ever seen him drive, to be honest. Last year was already super, but being a world champion has made him, I think, an even more confident and better driver this year. So that is the standout car of the year, and he's using it to his full advantage. At the beginning of the season, I would have said Perez he wasn't on par with Verstappen, but he was a lot closer. They then made changes to that car that clearly suited Verstappen much more than they suited Perez, and since then it's been the Max Verstappen show.
Verstappen 1.2 seconds quicker than Sergio Perez at the moment in the Red Bull. Both of them back into the pits then, so only the Red Bulls are in the pit lane currently. Lando Norris is 3 seconds down on Verstappen after the middle sector on this run on the soft tyres. Comes out of the final corner and out across the line. Bit of a slide for Norris as he puts the power down, and he comes across the line to do a 35.7, so 1.5 seconds slower than he has managed previously, and therefore 3.5 seconds slower than Verstappen. Hamilton reporting on the radio that it's very gusty out there, and he is just coming now up to Spoon Curve, and he's in 14th position at the moment on the hard tyres, a 10th quicker than George Russell, who's out there on the hards as well, on the mediums.
Yeah, the wind gusts look to be aligning with some of the snaps that we're having.
So that's Pete Bonington saying the wind gusts are aligning with some of the snaps we're having. So Hamilton having a bit of entry oversteer, one would suggest, at certain corners, in the same way that a couple of drivers got caught out in Barcelona by those gusts into turn 4. Replay of Yuki Tsunoda having a very odd moment.
Yeah, the Alonso don't know how to move.
Copy.
Alonso doesn't know how to move, says Tsunoda. It's a bold claim. Not quite sure what that was all about, honestly, but it looked as though he was sort of trying to get out of the way of Alonso, but Alonso I don't know, seemed to go past him. I don't really know what Tsunoda was complaining about there at all, to be perfectly honest with you. 45 minutes to go. Verstappen and Perez in the pits, Albon back in the pits, everybody else out there still. As Fernando Alonso is the sound you can hear coming into the second Degner. And he is on a cool-down lap at the moment. So nobody's really improved after those first few laps, which just shows how quickly the drivers can get up to speed. I'm sure improvements will come when they change tyres, but broadly speaking on that first set, it remains the same. As Alonso changes a little dial on the steering wheel, and George Russell comes out of the second Degner. Sebastian Vettel is pushing at the moment, and he is in 13th place, but he's not done a personal best in the first sector.
Can I just ask a quick question? Because I need to know the answer for a story I'm writing right now.
Yeah.
And I should know the answer because this is kind of my job, but I can't think of it. When was the last all-French, given now that Alpine have announced an all-French driver lineup at 2 o'clock in the morning in France, so the whole nation can cheer, when was the last all-French driver lineup? I'm thinking of Prost and Lacey at Ferrari in 91. Are there any others? Since then. Before that there were, but...
Jenny apparently is saying 1995.
Who?
I don't know. I've just been told by the producer Jenny's saying 1995.
It's in their press release.
Oh, is it?
Right.
Who was it?
You don't normally go to the territory of press releases because you've got better insider knowledge.
Come on, Jenny, put me out of my
Yeah,
misery.
but it doesn't say. It's just like in the headline. It says for the first time since 1995.
Oh, and it
It's
doesn't
like,
say
well,
who.
Tell us who, but it doesn't go that far.
Are you Wikipediaing it or me?
Yeah,
Jen?
yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it. Come on, you got to work. Come on, we got to work this out. Oh, is it going to be? Oh, it's going to be some really obscure people like
Just do it.
Gasho and...
Gasho's Belgian.
Yeah, I know.
Arnoux? I don't know.
Arnoux wasn't racing much in 95.
Shame.
Oh, come on, who's this going to be? This is going to really annoy me. Yes. Is it... Are we talking Eric Bernard and Christophe Bouchou?
Yeah.
No, but they did no races, so that can't be true.
I'm looking down the list of French drivers. I can't see how it works.
No, I don't. I mean...
Well, maybe they had the lineup, but they didn't race. That's a poor drop, isn't it? Not taking apart the press release that Alpine
released. The only
released.
French drivers that overlap, and they're even including Gasho in this, on the list of French drivers on Wikipedia, are in 95, are Panis and Bouillon. But they weren't teammates, were they?
So, Junior LaRousse, apparently, according to this, have Bouchou and Bernard as their two drivers. But despite being on the entry list, the LaRousse team did not contest any races.
Well, that doesn't count then, does it?
That absolutely doesn't count if you're Alpine. So there's no way
that they got their press release wrong.
I think
as well as getting all their driver choices wrong as well.
I think they must do. I think that's a load of nonsense from Alpine.
This has turned into an Alpine burn, which wasn't meant to be a burn at all for Alpine. But I will contact their press people and ask.
Because that's...
I think it's Prost and Lacey at Ferrari in 91. Yeah.
I think you're right. And I think that, because was in the 80s...
Hashtag BBCF1 help
Yeah, hashtag BBCF1. Yeah. Help Andrew Benson write
my story.
Yeah. There was loads with that Elf Driver Academy, weren't there? Like Jabouille and Arnoux.
And then Arnoux and Tambay at Ferrari in 83.
Jabouille, did Jabouille have a French teammate ever?
Arnoux. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they were the original Renault teammates. After Jabouille was the original Renault driver on his own.
So yeah, it used to be quite a thing.
And you had Lafitte and Depailler at Ligier as well.
Yeah. French team with two French drivers was a real vibe in the 70s and 80s. So there we go. 40 minutes and 40 seconds on the clock. Verstappen.
Ooh.
What?
The desk editor in BBC Salford said Panis and Bernard in 1994.
Oh, okay. Fair play to the desk editor in Salford. Verstappen out on circuit again on the soft tyre. And he's on the same soft tyre that he was out on previously.
I think he's on a long run now, Jack. So his first sector was quite a way off. He's 4 seconds off the pace currently. So what he would have done, obviously, this tyre, the soft tyre, is the fastest tyre but the least durable. He's gone out and done and obliterated everybody on 1 lap pace, and now he wants to find out, and Red Bull want to find out what this tyre can do if they need to use it in the race. I think that durability is questionable on the soft's performance at Suzuka, given the stress loads that the tyre goes through around this lap.
Actually, it's Panis and Lagos who replaced Bernard at Ligier in '94 for the Japanese and Australian Grand Prix.
But there was also in '95 at La Rousse,
who didn't race.
No, but I think in '94 they did.
Right.
Oh, thank you, Charles.
So I think Carlos Sainz getting a bit of I think he's complaining about the traffic there from
his teammate
Charles Leclerc ahead of him. But there was also at La Rousse in '94 Eric Comas, and he was teammates with both Yannick Dalmas and Philippe Alliot. So I think we must be 94 then. I think we're pretty sure it's 94. 38 minutes and 43 seconds on the clock. Is that going in the story?
100%, yeah.
Okay.
It's been requested. It wasn't in originally, but that's why I'm having to look it up.
Oh, and at Pacific in 1994, you had Paul Belmondo and Bertrand Gachot.
So,
but are we counting Gachot? Gachot's a tricky one. 38 minutes and 20 seconds to go. He classed himself as European and raced with the European flag. And he also, I think, had Belgian nationality too. But he was Belgian from 1989 to 1991, and then he was French from 1992 to 1995, Bertrand Gachot. And then he was in prison from 1992 to 1993 or something. Here's Latifi's radio.
And the wind sensitivity right now, among the highest I felt it all season.
So that was some Nicholas Latifi radio in the Williams team. Sergio Perez out on circuit, and it sounds like he's doing a long run as well. And is that the way you would do it, Sam? Wait until the end to do your qualifying sims, like as close to qualifying as possible?
Yeah, they've gone out and done a benchmark time at the beginning. Now settle in and do your race stints, and then at the end then go out again, because it's the closest thing to qualifying. That would be what I would want to do. So certainly it seems like people are doing that kind of thing right now.
Luke Mason has messaged in that he thinks it's the first, or I don't know where he's got this from, but the first full-time all-French lineup at a Renault-owned team since Prost and Arnoux in '82, but that's at a Renault team, so that sort of blurs the picture there a little bit. So yeah, F1 1994, quite a lot of French lineups. Across the line comes Perez. Do you have a preference of teammate nationality? Is it easier having an English teammate and you can laugh about EastEnders and get each other's jokes a bit, or does it not really make a difference?
I mean, I've had English teammates, I've had Dutch teammates who come from Maastricht,
yes.
And say funny words. I've had French teammates,
Argentinian, Swiss,
indeed, New Zealand. Yeah, I've had all sorts. Swedish.
Who was your Swedish teammate?
Marcus Ericsson.
Oh,
Marcus Ericsson.
What, in GP2?
In GP2. I think I've probably had more French teammates than anything else.
And how's that?
Yeah, it's fine. One of the years was slightly strained at the end, but it all got ironed out at the end. But yeah, I don't really have a preference, to be honest. Everybody Everybody's nice. I know. It's a friendly thing to say.
Really?
Yeah, unfortunately. I hate to say it,
Everybody's
guys.
nice.
Andrew Benson thinks nobody's nice, so that's the position he's coming from.
It's
I don't think you'd have said that if you were Nelson Piquet's teammate, for example.
no. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Jenny?
Talking about Ericsson, that jogged my mind. Do you remember that he put out a tweet right at the beginning of August with all the moves that he thought were going to happen? And this is after Alonso announced that he was going to leave Alpine. So I just wanted to go back, if we've got a second, just to go over how right or wrong he was, because it's fascinating. So he said Alpine would be Ocon and Gasly. Tick. AlphaTauri, he got a little wrong. He said it would be Schumacher and Tsunoda, but we'll give him a half a point for Tsunoda.
And nobody saw Nick de Vries coming, to be fair.
Norris and Piastri, tick. Bottas and Zhou, tick at Alfa Romeo. Haas, he thought would be Magnussen and Ricciardo. Still time. Williams.
That's not going to happen.
I know, but, you know, it's not done. I mean, it probably is, but it'll be Hülkenberg or Schumacher, but leaning towards Hülkenberg after yesterday. And Williams, he reckoned, was going to be Albon and De Vries. So Marcus Ericsson gets, I think, a big smiley face on his homework and a green tick.
Well, he can't get a tick. It was wrong. He can get a good effort or something, but he can't get a tick.
Card.
Yeah.
Well done, Marcus.
Well done, Marcus, if you're listening.
Yeah, like he is. He's too busy hugging his Indy 500 trophy.
Yeah, exactly. All he does now is drink milk.
He could be listening if he's in America.
Yeah, he could be.
Which he's probably not, is he? Because he raced in Sweden last weekend.
Did he?
Yeah.
In what?
A saloon car.
Really?
Along with Felix Rosenqvist.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Good knowledge, Sam.
Yeah, there we go.
Really? What were what, in an STCC or something?
Swedish tour,
Yeah, they did a
championship
one-off.
thing.
That kind of area, regional sort of GT Cup thing.
Oh, it wasn't the Porsche. It wasn't the Porsches, was it? Because Rosenqvist has done a few guest appearances in the Porsche Carrera Cup Scandinavia.
I'm not sure whether it was a full Porsche Carrera Cup. One of them was in a Porsche. Definitely.
Well, we'll try and get to the bottom of that one. Amazing weekend radio. But yeah, it was the Carrera Cup at Mantorp Park.
How did they do?
Ericsson qualified 10th for both races, finished 8th and 5th with the fastest lap in race 2. Thanks to everyone at Porsche Sweden. I met the Porsche Sweden man. He's a lovely man. He was at Race of Champions last year in Sweden.
He's lovely.
Yeah, no, he is. He was a lovely
here.
man. That was Ericsson's first ever time driving a GT car.
So Lewis has now put on the soft tyre and is going for a push lap. As we exit Sector 1, he was already, was it 6/10 down, Jack? So quite a way off for the Mercedes driver.
Onto the brakes, into the hairpin now. Couple of, or has a correction mid-corner. And Russell is on a lap on the soft tyres as well. Still Verstappen's 32.0 that he said about 20 minutes ago. That's still the quickest lap time, comfortably quicker than anyone else, but we're yet to see a representative time from the Mercedes and from the Ferraris. Ferrari are still in the pit lane. Russell's half a second down on Verstappen in Sector 1. Hamilton after the middle sector is 9/10 of a second down. So the Mercedes not particularly close to the Red Bulls at the moment on this early showing. As he comes into the chicane, Hamilton on the power, out of the final corner and across the line. And Hamilton goes third fastest, 1.2 seconds slower than Verstappen. Russell, meanwhile, is just coming up into Spoon Curve. That's the sound you can hear. These are brand new tyres, brand new soft tyres for the Mercedes duo. Russell after the middle sector. How's he doing compared to his teammate? He is quicker than Hamilton by about 0.3 of a second at the moment. Yellow flag in Sector 2, but it's now gone clear again, so someone just running a bit wide somewhere. As Russell comes out of the final corner on the power. Is he going to get ahead of Hamilton? Yes, he is. He's 9/10 away from Max Verstappen's lap time. So that's Fairly ominous early lap stat for Mercedes. They were 1-2 in practice yesterday in the wet conditions, but those initial runs in free practice make it seem like they are not particularly rapid in the dry.
The other thing to worry about as well, Jack, Max did that in his opening lap at the beginning of the session pretty much.
Yeah.
Now, everybody else has, and that's when the track was at its worst, because we had rain yesterday, no rubber down, and now people have been doing some long runs. Track would have rubbered in just a little bit better, so the track should be in a faster window right now than when Max did his time. So to see that lap time difference will be alarming for the Mercedes people.
Yeah, certainly will. Verstappen quickest, a second quicker basically than George Russell, 1.1 seconds quicker than Perez, 1.2 seconds quicker than Lewis Hamilton. Jenny?
Yeah, just having a look at the weather for tomorrow to see what we can expect. And it certainly looks like the weather's going to build, with the chance of rain increasing around midday, and looks almost 100%. It's 97% chance of rain by 3 o'clock. So let's have a think about what it's going to do tomorrow. But it's highly likely that we will get some wet running at some point through the race tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. But the focus at the moment is just going to be on the qualifying session for today. Anyway, that's the dry running, but you still are going to do that long running in the dry to get some data, just in case it is going to be dry tomorrow. But it certainly seems, the forecast, as though it's going to be a damp one. Joe coming through the final couple of corners, out across the line. Alonso's just on the fastest middle sector of anyone, and he's only 3/10 down on Verstappen after sector 2. Ocon is lapping at a very similar pace, so that suggests that the Alpines are looking fairly pacey. Here comes Alonso, and he goes second quickest, half a second away from Max Verstappen, half a second clear of the Mercedes.
And on a set of medium tyres for both of them.
Yeah, they jump into second and third, so that suggests there's plenty more to come from Mercedes. I think that's what I would read into that, is that was by no means a full push lap for the Mercedes crew. 27 minutes and 50 seconds on the clock. Carlos Sainz coming through sector 1 now, up through Dunlop and into the Degners, and he's 2/10 up on Verstappen in the first sector. So the lap time's about to come in a little bit more thick and fast now, with Carlos Sainz on the soft tyres. His teammate Charles Leclerc is just starting a lap, coming through the S's as Sainz gets on the power, out of the hairpin and through the long, flat-out right-hand blast towards Spoon. Charles Leclerc comes through sector 1, and he's 500ths up on Verstappen. So a couple of tenths down on his teammate Charles Leclerc. Hamilton now goes into 4th position, improves on his second lap to go 1/10 of a second quicker than George Russell. But Sainz now comes through the middle sector and does the fastest middle sector of anyone. He's now a second up on Max Verstappen. So big lap time coming in here from Carlos Sainz, the Spaniard, who never really had the pace to stick with Perez and Leclerc in Singapore a week ago. Gets a little airy on the throttle as he comes out of the chicane, but he goes quicker than Verstappen by a second. A 1 minute 30.965. Charles Leclerc through the middle sector is 3/10 down on his teammate Carlos Sainz. So a couple of tenths away in sector 1, a couple of tenths away in sector 2, and now onto the brakes into the chicane. Neat and tidy from Leclerc, out across the line. He slots into second place, but ends up going 4/10 slower than his teammate Carlos Sainz. That's a pretty good lap all round from Sainz there.
Very strong, very strong. He definitely, this second half of the year, he has significantly improved from the first half. We now go on board with Max Verstappen. Oh, and a bit of traffic with the Ferrari.
That was Sainz.
That Ferrari is in the middle of the road there.
And Verstappen then comes back into the pit lane. Not sure how long ago that was, that incident with the Ferrari, but Verstappen is back in the pits. So Sainz and Leclerc first and second. Verstappen is third in the pit lane. Alonso and Ocon are 4th and 5th, but on the medium tyres. Hamilton's 6th on the softs. Russell's 7th on the softs. 8th is Sergio Perez. Here's Hamilton's radio.
So majority of the lap time delta is in straight line. We look strong in the low-speed corners.
So that to me suggests in the straight line that Mercedes are maybe not at full tilt at the moment?
No, it suggests they've got a draggy car like they've had all season. Also, being strong in the slow corners is not exactly a big thing at Suzuka, given there's like one.
Come on, there's two. Yeah. But, you're not expecting them to be 2 seconds off the pace, are you, Andrew?
Yes.
Really?
I wouldn't say... Well, they were 2 seconds off in Spa. I don't think they'll be 2 seconds off, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're at least a second.
Max Verstappen hasn't done a lap time yet. So let's wait and see what he can do on a new set of soft. But it is worrying. These kind of circuits are not suiting Mercedes at all right now. This has got a lot of corners, a lot of combined corners, and you need a good car in terms of drag efficiency, change of direction, and high speed efficiency and power. And it's those things the Mercedes just doesn't seem to have this year.
Gasly across the line to go 7th fastest in the AlphaTauri, splits the Mercedes drivers. Hamilton 6th, Russell in 8th, 24 minutes on the clock. Tsunoda is improving on this lap. He comes through the middle sector. He's 1.3 seconds back from Sainz, so he might go quicker than Gasly here. Onto the brakes, into the chicane, out of the chicane, down towards the line, and Tsunoda comes through to go 6th fastest, so he does go quicker than Pierre Gasly by about 1/10 of a second. And the Mercedes are back out on circuit. Just getting a look at Lando Norris coming into the chicane, turning into the right. Sorry, it's Ricciardo, my apologies, and catches the right front, locks up Ricciardo and goes straight on. And Latifi improves to go 17th fastest in the Williams. And so Sainz is quickest, Leclerc is 2nd, Verstappen is 3rd, Alonso 4th, Ocon 5th, Tsunoda, Hamilton, Gasly, Russell, Perez the top 10, Bottas, Vettel, Zhou, Norris and Magnussen the top 15, and then it is Ricciardo, Latifi, Schumacher, Albon and Stroll, the 20 drivers. Just getting a look at Hamilton, also catching the front right with a lock-up and missing the apex at the chicane. Stroll is improving on this lap. Verstappen and Alonso back in the pits, as I say. Sainz has been through the pits and come out again on the same tyres that he was on previously. Russell is coming through the first sector and is improving at the moment. He's on the same soft tyres that he was on for his first lap. Coming up the hill now through Dunlop, swinging through the left, and through the first sector he's 7/10 away from Carlos Sainz, and it is not a personal best in sector 1 for George Russell. Will have taken the best out of the tyres. Lance Stroll's on a much quicker lap at the moment. He's down in 20th place currently, but he's on a medium tyre and still going fairly swiftly, 32.8 in sector 1, so he's about 2.5 seconds down after the first 2 sectors, so might be slower than his teammate Sebastian Vettel at the moment, but both of the Aston Martins are on the medium tyre. Big snap for Russell as he comes through the second part of Spoon, through the middle sector now. Stroll goes 13th. He doesn't manage to beat Vettel's time. Russell's 1.8 seconds away after the first 2 sectors, so I don't think we're going to have an improvement on this lap for George Russell. So maybe this is a bit more ominous for Mercedes than it initially looked to be. Verstappen still in the pits, Alonso still in the pits, and 13 laps on the board for Max Verstappen at the moment. The most are the Ferraris. They've done 18 laps each, actually 20 for Daniel Ricciardo, so he's got the most laps out there. Jenny?
Yeah, just speaking to Mercedes, they have confirmed that they've brought out the extra hard for Hamilton just for data gathering, really, to make sure that they could do runs on the hard today, and they've still got the sets for tomorrow to use. They've also had a conversation with Hamilton saying that the majority of the lap time deficit is in the straight lines. They are competitive in slow speed corners. That's not going to help them so much, though.
Yeah, 20 minutes and 33 seconds on the clock. And it is Sainz and Leclerc who are quickest at the moment. Verstappen and Alonso still in the pit lane. Ocon in 5th. Tsunoda, Hamilton, Gasly, Russell and Perez are the top 10 at the moment. Sainz and Leclerc on track, again on those same soft tyres as before. In fact, Leclerc hasn't been back into the pits, whereas Sainz did come through the pit lane. Albon goes him into 4th place, 1.4 seconds away from Carlos Sainz. So that feels like our first sort of almost real competitive lap of the session from Alex Albon. To be 1.4 seconds off the Ferraris, I'm expecting Ferrari to find a bit more time than that. And those are the lap times where you're then like, okay, so none of this makes any sense then. So the competitive order that we had briefly is kind of disappearing.
Gone out the window.
Yeah. Leclerc just ran wide. He was on a push lap, ran wide on the exit of the second Degner and bailed out of that one.
It's so disappointing when you have to bail out of a lap, third or halfway round because of a mistake. Now those tyres will just not be as good the next time he wants to push, so he'll miss the perfect opportunity to do a lap time.
Charles Leclerc looks like he's been trying quite hard to have an accident at Degner 2 so far this weekend, doesn't he? Normally someone crashes there in the course of the weekend. It's one of those corners that sucks you in, because I think that it's so quick, Degner 1, Sam, isn't it? And then you've got to brake quite late into to Degner 2. And
there was a season, how many years ago was it, where everybody was trying to have an accident through there. I think Kvyat had the big crash afterwards.
That was a bit beyond, wasn't it, on the way to the hairpin?
That was a bit beyond, but I think it was that same sort of period. Was it 15 or 16?
Yeah, something like that. And there were a lot of people in the gravel. Mainly, a lot of the time, exit of Degner 1, you go off, and then you're in the gravel and you're just going straight on into the wall. 18 minutes and 20 seconds to go. And a lot of the front runners back in the pits, although as I say that, Verstappen has just headed out on a medium tyre with 18 minutes on the clock, so maybe a bit of a long run incoming for Max Verstappen. Do you know much karaoke in Japan?
No, I never did the karaoke thing.
Really?
No, but I saw a clip of Tsunoda and Gasly doing it together. I mean, it looks like a bit of a laugh. I think as a European, it's something quite alien to us, as something to do to have fun. No, I don't mean that in any disrespectful way. It's not my cup of tea. I mean, do you like a good karaoke?
No, I've done karaoke. I've done like a karaoke like night like once.
Yeah,
in my whole life. You? Never at all?
No, because my voice is an abysmal thing.
No, but if someone's but sometimes you end up in a karaoke place. You don't necessarily have to do the singing.
No, the only thing that I've done, the singing thing that I've done was at a Mercedes end of season party.
Yeah.
And me and Michael Schumacher sang a song together.
A duet?
Yeah,
what,
we sung
Islands in the Stream.
No, we sung Buck Rogers by Feeder.
No way.
Together up on stage. Yeah, it was really bizarre. Really bizarre.
Wow.
Yeah, and I retired.
You should sing that now.
No,
got a brand new car, looks like a Jaguar.
Yeah.
That's on brand.
Yeah, it's even got a CD player.
Yeah, that's on brand for you now. Wow, Michael Schumacher and Sam Bird singing Feeder.
Random fact of the day.
That's superb. Andrew Benson has a karaoke story he wants to tell. I can see it in his eyes.
I don't want to tell it, but I've definitely got one. I did an all-nighter one night in Japan with Tom Clarkson, Susie Perry and Lee McKenzie.
Really?
Yeah.
In a karaoke place?
It was after the race.
Yeah.
And before I was flying back. But yeah, an all-nighter in a karaoke place at Susie, yeah.
Wow. Tom Clarkson, Susie
Air
Perry
guitar was
and Lee
involved
McKenzie.
and all sorts.
Goodness me. I'm just going to watch Verstappen come through the...
You're lost for words, aren't you?
Here comes Verstappen. He's improving on this lap. Just going to watch him come through the final corner on the medium tyre. Gets on the power. He's going to improve, but he's not going to beat Carlos Sainz's lap time. But he only goes 0.3 of a second slower than Sainz. Verstappen on the mediums compared to Sainz on the softs. So that was a push lap from Verstappen on the mediums. So didn't fuel it up, but...
No, I think they're trying to work out now if he can get through to Q3, obviously without using a set of softs within that period. Obviously, he's got serious speed within himself and in the car, but there's such a significant gap between the medium and the soft, I think, here this weekend, that can he do it? And that's what we're seeing him try to work out, as we see Latifi have a horrible snap.
Yeah, coming into Spoon after the first apex, he then got a bit wide and ended up in the runoff area and carries on his way. Perez is on a push lap on the medium tyre as well. Jenny, karaoke?
Karaoke in Japan is possibly one of the best things in life. It's not the same as, for some reason, it's just not the same as karaoke in London. I've done both a few times. I did it after MotoGP at Motegi. It was a very, very messy night at somewhere called The Cage, I think. And Elton John and Kiki D.
Well, Elton John was there.
No, well, almost. Jorge Lorenzo was very reminiscent of. Not quite exactly the same.
Wow.
It's a good night. They do good nights in MotoGP land.
I bet. 14 minutes to go. Because they're all crazy for riding motorbikes. That's why. Less than 14 minutes to go then. Sainz quickest, Verstappen second, Leclerc third, Albon fourth, Alonso fifth. Perez is 0.8 of a second down on Sainz after the middle sector. He is on a personal best. He's the only man on track, really, Sergio Perez, apart from Stroll and Joe. And Joe's only just left the pit lane. Here comes Perez across the line, and he jumps up to fourth fastest, 0.9 away from Carlos Sainz, and the traditional Verstappen teammate gap of 0.6 from Max Verstappen, who's in second position. So Sainz quickest, Verstappen second, Leclerc third, Perez fourth, Albon fifth, Alonso and Ocon sixth and seventh, Tsunoda eighth, Hamilton ninth, Gasly 10th, and then Russell, Vettel, Bottas, Stroll and Joe the top 15. Magnussen, Norris, Ricciardo, Latifi and Schumacher the 20 drivers. Schumacher 0.4 of a second away from Kevin Magnussen, so that hasn't really harmed him too much, the lack of running yesterday so far today. Just having a look at Yuki Tsunoda coming out of the final, coming into the chicane, and I think we're just looking at him taking quite a bit of curb on the way into that first right-hander. But everybody in the pits bar Perez. Russell has just left the pits on a brand new set of soft tyres. This should give us a bit more of an indication of what Mercedes pace is looking like. Joe on his outlap as well. 12 minutes and 25 seconds to go. It's an interesting session, this, because of the rain tomorrow. Maybe they're not actually focusing on long runs quite so much. Andrew, is that how it sort of feels to you?
To be honest with you, I don't really know what's going on. There's definitely been some race running, hasn't there? Alpine started off doing some. Red Bull don't really appear to have done any.
Well, but Max tried it on the soft, didn't he? Tried to do a few laps on the softs just to see if they would work.
But they weren't fully loaded, were they?
No.
So it's an interesting one. They will have done some race running, all of them, because, I mean, just you confidently predicted it was going to be wet tomorrow. We don't actually know that yet, do we? I don't know.
It's an interesting one. 11 minutes and 25 seconds remaining.
What happens in these sessions, these one-off practice sessions, is that they all pick a race fuel load to run with, but it's not necessarily the same race fuel load, whereas normally in a second practice session on a Friday afternoon, they'll all be doing full tanks pretty much with the race simulation runs, which is why those are so valuable to assess. But here, you know, you might have one team doing 80 kilos, one team doing 60, one team doing 50, and it just becomes impossible to tell what's going on unless they all know, because they've got ways of, from the GPS data and all sorts, with the judging acceleration rates with the cars and
what they can then figure out what everyone else is running,
cross-correlate fuel loads. They can know pretty much to within a couple of kilos what fuel load each car had at each time, but we can't possibly hope to do that from here.
And the reason why the weight is so important, everybody, is that 10 kilos in terms of Formula One, if you're carrying an extra 10 kilos of fuel, it's around 0.3 a lap. So it can, if you don't know that information about fuel on other competitors, and you see yourself 3, 4, 6 tenths down, it might be performance, but it almost certainly could be fuel as well.
Right, Hamilton through sector 1 now. Russell is coming through sector 2. Russell is 3 tenths down on Sainz. Hamilton is 400ths up on Carlos Sainz. So this is a bit more rapid, this pacing coming here from the Mercedes. Russell down through the gears, turns it into the chicane, gets on the power and comes out across the line. Russell goes 4th fastest. Half a second away from Carlos Sainz. Hamilton is coming through the middle sector. They've both gone out on a brand new set of the soft tyres. Hamilton's turning it into Spoon through the double apex left-hander. Back on the power, down the long straight towards 130R and the chicane. And after the middle sector, Hamilton is 4 tenths away from Sainz. So it was a good first sector for Hamilton. The middle sector, I think, is slower than Russell. And he will probably slot in just about where Russell is. He was very aggressive on the way into the chicane, bouncing over the curbs and skidding across the track. And he goes slower than Russell in the end by 1/10 of a second. So 5 tenths and 6 tenths respectively off Sainz's pace for Russell and Hamilton. Leclerc is on an outlap on a brand new set of soft tyres. Sainz and Verstappen currently in the pits. So that's a sort of bit better for the Mercedes. They're not sort of as miles off as they were before, but still half a second or so away. James Vowles is the man who was standing in the Toto Wolff position this weekend. As we mentioned yesterday, Toto Wolff missing this Grand Prix, so it is Vowles who's standing in that spot. Sainz has just left the pits on a new set of soft tyres as well. So we'll get another run in from the Ferraris. Valtteri Bottas through the middle sector. He's half a second down in sector 1, 4 tenths down, so he's 9 tenths down overall here, Valtteri Bottas. So he might get up ahead of, he should get up ahead of his teammate Joe. Joe is 7th quickest, 1.4 seconds off the pace of Sainz, and he does get ahead of Joe by 4 tenths of a second. Ricciardo through sector 1. He's 2 tenths down on Carlos Sainz as he fires it into Degner 1, then on the power in Degner 2. This is a new set of soft tyres for Ricciardo. They looked quite pacey early on those first laps on the hards, did the McLaren team. They did 9 laps of running on the hard tyre, then 11 laps on a set of soft. So they have been focusing quite a lot on race runs. That's why they're down in 17th and 18th, and now we're going to see what their single lap pace is. Ricciardo, very neat and tidy as he comes through Spoon, hugs the second apex a lot more than some of the other drivers. And through the middle sector split, how far is he away from Carlos Sainz? It is only half a second. So this is kind of just behind Mercedes sort of territory, this lap time from Daniel Ricciardo, depending on how the final sector goes. On the power out of the final corner now. And Ricciardo does jump up into 6th place, just behind the Mercedes by a couple of tenths of a second.
And meanwhile, Jack, Charles Leclerc is going very quick in his Ferrari, so that's something to look out for.
Yeah, fastest first sector for Charles Leclerc then, as he looks to beat his teammate Carlos Sainz. He's on a new set of tyres. Verstappen has just left the pits on a new set of soft tyres as well, and Russell getting a bit held up by Lance Stroll in the final chicane. I don't know if that was on a quick lap for Russell. It looked like he was pushing. Meanwhile, Norris is on a lap, but Leclerc, as you say, Sam, going very quickly at the moment. Stroll jumps up into 6th place. That's a decent lap from the Aston Martin. Oh, right onto the white line on the way into the chicane there for Norris. I thought for all the world he was going to snag the grass, but he managed to avoid it. Leclerc's half a tenth up on Sainz after the middle sector. Norris goes 6th, ahead of Stroll then. So that's 6th place for the McLaren of Norris, 7th for Stroll, 8th for Ricciardo. Leclerc can't beat Sainz, 100th slower than his teammate, and his teammate is improving. So Sainz is looking very strong around Suzuka at the moment. Verstappen, meanwhile, is just coming across the line now to start his flying lap, but Sainz is in some great form here.
He really is, as we spoke about earlier, Jack. I really feel like he's turned the corner from what was a difficult start to the year, and he's putting in some very decent performances now.
into the chicane. He doesn't actually set a personal best in the middle sector, Carlos Sainz, so losing a little bit of time out across the line, and he doesn't improve that time around. He goes 600ths slower than he had managed previously, so both Ferraris lapping very, very similarly, but Max Verstappen is looking set to do the fastest first sector of anyone with 5 minutes to go. Andrew Benson.
I was just going to say, I think Sainz has got closer to Leclerc in qualifying, but he's been off the pace in races quite a lot recently.
Yeah.
Think about Singapore, Spa, Hungary.
Yeah, it's
Zandvoort, all of them.
Yeah, he's not able to keep in the fight up at the front, is he? Once the race gets underway, Verstappen is coming through the hairpin now and is still going quicker than the Ferraris at the moment, heading towards Spoon. Lando Norris keeps out of his way as he turns into the left-hander. Hamilton has returned to the pit lane. Verstappen now about to come through the middle sector split. How is he doing compared to Carlos Sainz? He's up by 1/4 of a second. So another strong lapping coming here from the champion-elect. Max Verstappen could wrap up his second world title tomorrow if he wins the race with fastest lap, or if he wins the race and Charles Leclerc isn't second. Verstappen across the line, and he goes quicker, 3/10 quicker than the Ferraris, a 1:30.671, 3/10 to the Ferraris, 8/10 to the Mercedes, a second to the McLaren of Norris, who's running in 6th place, 7th for Stroll, 8th Ricciardo, 9th for Perez, 10th for Albon, Bottas, Vettel, Tsunoda, Zhou, the top 14, Alonso and Ocon, and Alonso goes 4th. Just about to say the Alpines are going to be on the soft tyres soon, and Alonso is only 6/10 away from Max Verstappen, and on that pace looks quicker than the Mercedes. What is Ocon up to? He's just come through the middle sector, Esteban Ocon. 3/10, he's about 7/10 down on Verstappen, so he might just come in behind the Mercedes here, Esteban Ocon, depending on how this final sector goes. Gets on the power out of the chicane and drives towards the line, and Ocon goes slower than the Mercedes and the McLaren of Lando Norris. So that is 8th place for Esteban Ocon. So another strong lap incoming from Fernando Alonso. So the order is Verstappen, Sainz, Leclerc, Alonso, Russell, the top 5, Hamilton, Norris, Ocon, Stroll, Ricciardo, the top 10. Perez is in 11th, but he's just starting another flying lap now as he comes into the first corner. And this is a new set of tyres for Sergio Perez in the Red Bull. Through the S's. Gradually climbing the hill, although it drops down a little bit before the run up to Dunlop. 2 minutes and 10 seconds on the clock. Perez 3/10 down on Verstappen in sector 1, and he's got traffic everywhere coming through the Degners. That would have been a bit distracting. Both Hatties and Esteban Ocon were all there, so we'll see. He's still doing it in personal best, Perez, but that was not the place to get a load of traffic.
Absolutely not. You would have lost quite a lot of time, I can imagine, Jack, through that section of the circuit. Already 3.5 tenths down. I can't imagine that it'll stay at that gap when we get to the end of sector 2. Let's have a look. Only a few seconds to go now before we get the sector 2 time. What's it going to be compared to his teammate? Sergio Perez crosses the timing line and is 7/10 down after 2 sectors. So yeah, he's lost quite a bit of time, and you can only assume that quite a bit of it was with that traffic.
1 minute and 20 seconds remaining in this third practice session ahead of the Japanese Grand Prix. 2 hours till qualifying gets underway. Perez goes 5th. 8/10 adrift of Verstappen. Slower than both Ferraris and slower than Fernando Alonso. Quicker than the Mercedes, though, who are 6th and 7th quickest. 8th for Norris, 9th for Ocon, 10th for Lance Stroll.
Just on that Alonso time, remember Alpine introduced a new floor in Singapore, which they were very optimistic about. And Alonso said last weekend that it wouldn't be till Suzuka. Here's some Russell radio.
Copy.
Russell got a load of traffic up at the hairpin, but it wouldn't be until Suzuka that
they saw what the potential of that floor was, just because of the nature of the circuit.
Are Alpine finally getting their act together?
Well, on one level, maybe.
Well, yeah. Yeah, okay, fair point, actually. But I sort of, yeah. car-wise, I'm just trying to... When were they last fourth in the constructors?
The point you're trying to make, well, they're not fourth anymore, are they? After both retired in Singapore.
Very true.
But I think what you're trying to say, is that car performance-wise, they definitely seem to be on a really good trajectory. They've been quicker than McLaren in the sort of recent races. Reliability-wise, obviously they've still got some significant problems, and obviously they've messed up their driver choice situation for the next season as well. So the car thing is a big step forward for them.
They were 18 points ahead of McLaren going into the last race. They are now 4 points behind McLaren because of that double DNF last time out. And that new floor, the team are really happy with. And they are buoyed by everything that's going on at the moment, especially their new driver announcements, they say. But you have to question once again the timing of Alonso's departure.
Yeah, well, we sort of had that chat a little bit yesterday. I don't think Aston Martin's a bad place to be heading, though, personally. But again, we got into that yesterday. But I'm just looking at the reserve. Since they came back in 2016, they were fourth in 2018, weren't they? With Nico Hülkenberg and Carlos Sainz. That was a strong year for the Renault team as it was then, and then it kind of never really kicked on with Ricciardo and Hülkenberg and Ricciardo and Ocon, 2 fifth-place finishes, but maybe a 4th-place finish this year. Checker flag is out. Max Verstappen ends the session quickest at 1 minute 30.671, 3/10 quicker than Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari, with Charles Leclerc 3rd in the other Ferrari, Alonso 4th in the Alpine, 5th for Sergio Perez, Russell and Hamilton 6th and 7th for Mercedes, 8th for Lando Norris, 9th for Esteban Ocon, 10th for Lance Stroll. Then Ricciardo, Albon, Bottas, Vettel, Magnussen, the top 15. Schumacher matching Kevin Magnussen's time, so that shows he wasn't harmed too much from yesterday. 17th for Yuki Tsunoda, 18th for Zhou, 19th for Latifi, and 20th for Gasly. So no real pace at all for the AlphaTauri team. Just getting a replay of Max Verstappen coming through the second Degner and running a bit wide. I thought it was going to be more interesting than that, but it wasn't. But that's the top 20 after free practice 3.
Yeah, so setting the fastest time, Max Verstappen, even though he did run wide through the final corner, which is slightly ominous for everybody later on. But a funny old session with everybody kind of doing their own thing ahead of qualifying. Obviously, yesterday's running was all wet and today's running dry, so everybody trying to get as much information as possible. And Sam Bird, are we in for an exciting qualifying? I really hope so. People are getting up very early to dedicate their time to Formula One.
I hope so, Jenny. I hope so. I hope it's not just the Max Verstappen show out front, although I think he is the clear favourite. But Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc, and let's see what Fernando Alonso can do, and if he can continue that great form going into qualifying.
So all the drivers come round, starting their practice starts. They'll take to the grid. They have to shuffle as far forward as possible. Now, most of the drivers taking the left-hand side yesterday because of the big pools of water that were on the right, and Jack, most of them now taking the right-hand side.
Yeah, maybe to try and clean it up a little bit ahead of the Grand Prix tomorrow. But if it's wet, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, it's. I always find it interesting where you do your practice start from.
Well, they changed the rules a little bit. Now they've clarified it in the regs that you have to move as far forward as possible. I quite liked it when you could pick a space and just go for it. But clearly they've tried to get rid of that. So at the moment you've got the 2 Haas cars lining up on the front row. I think it's fair to say that's not going to happen tomorrow for the race. But a wet race. I've spoken to Pirelli as well, Sam. They reckon it could be a 2-stop race because degradation is so high.
What if it's wet or dry?
If it's dry.
Okay.
Yeah, but it looks like it's going to be quite mixed conditions, doesn't it, Jenny? So we could see multiple pit stops tomorrow if that's the case.
Which always livens things up. Pit stop time is around 22 seconds here in Suzuka, so let's see what happens. But we are headed into qualifying. Make sure you come back and join us. Qualifying session gets underway between 7 and 8 o'clock, and we will find out if Max Verstappen can take another step towards sealing this championship here at Suzuka. He certainly set the fastest time ahead of Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. In this session, a pole start would certainly help him in his bid to win this second title here in Japan. Jack Nicholls, thank you very much. Sam Bird as well, and Andrew Benson will all be back here for qualifying, so make sure you join us. You can read everything else on the BBC Sport website in the meantime, but from all of us here at IMG, thank you very much for joining us. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live. Good morning and good night.